On episode 677 of the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we meet Cara Metz and discuss her book, The Menopause Metabolism Fix. You can find the full show notes for this episode at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/667. Welcome to the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, the largest and longest running health and fitness podcast dedicated to people over 40. Whether you're looking to lose weight, get stronger, or improve your health and age better, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Coach Allen, an online health and fitness coach and author of The Wellness Roadmap. Each week, we dive into practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you take control of your health and fitness. If you're ready to look, feel, and perform your best, no matter your age, this podcast is the perfect place to start. Let's get you on the path to a healthier, fitter, and more energetic version of yourself. I hope you'll join us each week, and together we can unlock your full potential. Hello, this is Coach Allen with you. I hope you're having a good day. I hope you're doing well. I'm currently still in North Carolina. It is cold. Cold for me anyway, being from Panama and whatnot. And we got some snow and ice this weekend, which kind of bumbled our plans for my mother's memorial service. So that's been pushed out. And going through my mother's stuff, trying to get all that organized, this is a lot more than I expected it to be. So I'm going to probably be here longer than I planned. But one of the things she had that's really been a lifesaver is she had one of those You're Dead Now organizer books. Some of them have funny titles, but it's been a lifesaver to have the information. So if you haven't done one of these, I strongly encourage you to fill one out. My wife bought me one maybe 2 months ago, and I haven't bothered to fill it out. That's going to change. That's going to change definitely before this weekend. I'm gonna have that book done because this is harder than it looks, or harder than it seems. When you're dealing with all these things that need to be done and just knowing what's what and where things are, it's a good bit of work to get that done. So help your executor out, have a goodwill, and fill out one of these organizer books just to make their job a little bit easier. It does take some time, but it's well worth the investment of time to help people out when they're going through stuff like this. So pick you up one of those books. I don't have any interest in them. No financial interest in any of them, but as a general sense, they're great to have, and it's been very helpful for me to have one on my mother, even though it's slightly outdated. But get one, fill it out, keep it up to date. You're going to help the people that are after you. So that's my public service announcement. And then I wanted to talk about one other thing before we get into the episode today with Cara Metz. Is January 10th was it's the second Friday of each January. They call it Quitter's Day. So we've passed Quitter's Day, and I have to ask you, are you still on track? A lot of people are not. This was the day that most people, that's the second Friday of the year, each year is called Quitter's Day. It's the day when the most people fall off. Now, it might be a little different this year. The 10th seems awful early because we're not even 2 weeks into the year. But are you still on track? That's my basic question for you today. If you're struggling, you may just need a better plan. Often we go at this and we throw strategies and tactics together, and we don't really have a solid plan. And if you don't have a solid plan, you're probably not going to be successful for the long term. I'd like to help you come up with that plan. If you've got the time and you want to do it, I've got some time available on my calendars. I just opened up my calendar for this, put some time on the calendar. And if you want, you can go to 40plusfitness.com. That's 40plusfitness.com/2025. That's digits 2025. 40plusfitness.com/2025. That's going to take you to a calendar where you can book some slots that I have open for these planning sessions. We go through, we look at where you are, we look at where you're going, and we come up with a custom plan for you that will help you accomplish your goals for 2025. So if this is the year you want to make this happen and you know you need a better plan, go check it out, 40plusfitness.com/2025. Our guest today hosts a widely followed handle for perimenopause and menopause fitness on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. She is the creator of the Cara Fitness app, which caters to women over 40. A veteran of the fitness industry for 30 years, Cara began her career as a professional Latin American and ballroom dancer. She competed at the highest levels, holding titles as an open and closed British champion and UK closed professional champion. With no further ado, here's Cara Metz. Cara, welcome to 40 Plus Fitness.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about your book, The Menopause Metabolism Fix, the
That's
Over
correct.
40 Woman's 4-week program to recover your strong, sexy, and sane self in 15 minutes a day.
Yeah,
Um,
which is more important, the sexy bit or the sane bit?
there's a chart. I don't know if you've seen the YouTube video of the guy who charts out women, and there's the crazy on one axis, and then there's the
Yeah,
beautiful attractiveness on the other axis. And he literally zones out like wife material, stay away zone. It's
yeah.
kind of funny in a general sense, but I think, yeah, you kind of want a little bit of both.
I think so. I think so for sure, for sure. And it just depends what resonates with you, I guess,
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
well, as a woman, what is going to resonate with you? Do you feel like you're going a little bit crazy, or if you're lost yourself and you're not feeling the sexiness that, perhaps you maybe once were, or you just, would love to have a little bit more of?
Yeah, there's definitely a balance. We got to find that.
Most definitely. That definitely is.
All right. So I kind of want to kick off this conversation by talking about the two primary hormones that kind of get affected by um, menopause. And there's a lot more that get affected. So I don't want to try to, you can't really simplify this. It's so interesting because it's not just well, this is happening, this one thing's happening. So this, and this one thing's happening. Uh, everything's happening. But
Everything is happening. Well, that's what I mean, as a woman that is in the midst of it myself, it does feel like everything is happening. But I do like to try and simplify it as much as possible. And that's what I try to do in the book, because even though I've been a fitness professional for, I don't know, I haven't done the maths, but since 1996, which kind of shows my age, but it even now I can get really, it can be very confusing. And I think if I get confused by all of, there's so much out there, especially on social media as well. And someone's saying this, someone's saying that, and they're saying, and it's like, oh, there's so much information. So for me, it was super, super important to try and simplify everything as much as possible for the everyday person. Obviously I deal with women, but it's obviously good for men to know this, as and to understand as well, because
yeah,
they will have women in their life that are gonna go through this or are going through this, whether it's your mother, your partner, your sister, your daughter, so for everybody to understand, but in the most simplistic way, really, so it's not overwhelming and confusing.
yeah. And so the two core hormones that we're going to talk about first is estrogen and progesterone. Those are
Yeah.
very important hormones in the way that a woman's body and mind function. Can you talk a little bit about those and then kind of why suddenly now stress management and sugar consumption becomes so much more important for someone who's going through
Yeah.
this?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, so many things do get disrupted, but I think if talking about progesterone and estrogen, it's funny because I not get confused, but I say estrogen. I'm from the UK, so I say
Okay.
estrogen. So if I slip into that
That's
sometimes,
fine. No, no, you go ahead. Speak your truth
so
in your language. We'll get it.
I'll try to say estrogen. It's
We'll
like
catch up
I
with
do
you.
work with a lot of American women, so I do tend to say estrogen as well. But because they are fluctuating so much, and it can make such a it just causes the body to have all sorts of issues going on. And what we really need to try and do is to regulate those hormones as much as possible. And when you talk about stress management and say limiting sugar, these are two very important things we do need to look at. I'm going to talk more about estrogen because I think for me that it's not the most important, but it's probably, rather than getting too confused about talking about too many things. But if we think about estrogen, as a woman, the primary source of estrogen is from our ovaries. But as we get to a certain age, we know that that is going to start to fluctuate. We're not going to produce so much estrogen from the ovaries. And I kind of call that plan A. So plan A, we don't have any control over because it's, eventually we're going to stop producing estrogen from the ovaries. So it then clicks into, because your body is extremely clever and wants to regulate your hormones as much and balance those hormones for you as much as possible. So it gives you a secondary source, which I call plan B, which is from your adrenal glands. So your adrenal glands will then produce a weaker form of estrogen because it's desperately trying to regulate those hormones for you and give you some of the estrogen that you're now lacking from your ovaries. But the problem is we as women will self-sabotage, and we do it without realizing. And one of those things is getting extremely stressed. And I would love to meet a midlife woman that doesn't have any stress in her life. I would love to meet her because I haven't met one yet. But because we are of an age that I would say we're called the sandwich generation, we could have parents we're looking after because they're elderly. You could have your kids that are, they're teenagers, they're adults, but they still need a lot of care for. You could be at a point in your job where you're in a quite a high pressure job. You have a home you're trying to keep, possibly a partner you're trying to keep happy as well. There's all these things in the mix, and you get very, very, very stressed. But what happens then is adrenaline and cortisol will get pumped out by the adrenal glands. And then the estrogen that could possibly have been given to you from the adrenal glands doesn't get a look in because you've got the cortisol and the adrenaline is just going crazy. So what our body then tries to do, because it is desperately trying to help us, it will then lump fat cells around the midsection, around the belly area, because fat cells are also something that will give us estrogen. And that is why we tend to get we do tend to get belly fat around around the midsection. So we really need to try and not self-sabotage. But if I said to any woman, you need to reduce your stress, they would tell me where to go. They'd be like, really? So what we have to then try and do is try and deal with that stress in a better way, because we can't reduce the stress. We've got to look after, if we have elderly parents, the children are still going to need us. We've still got a house we have to care for. And we certainly can't tell our boss where to go when they're telling or like giving us all this stress. So it's learning breathing techniques, perhaps going out for a walk to reduce those stress levels, the breathing techniques, meditation, trying to get a good night's sleep. All of these things are what we need to try and do to try and deal with that stress in a better way. So not so much adrenaline and cortisol is being produced. So we can then let the adrenal glands do the work that they want to do. So that is one thing with the stress. The other thing when you spoke about limiting sugar, so this has a very similar thing, is the fact that when we are having too much sugar in our diet, we will then have our blood sugar, which is like we're not balancing our blood sugar. So you have this big spike of, sugar in the blood and then this massive crash. So when we have the crash, our body, again, trying to help us, thinks, oh, you need a bit of energy. So I'm going to give you some adrenaline and cortisol. So we have the same process, but in a different, for different reasons. So that is why a lot of times, in the most simplest way I'm trying to explain it, we have to try and reduce our stress, and we have to try and reduce our sugar intake. And I mean, this is the belly fat thing. I mean, it's also, I mean, I talk about belly fat quite a lot because for me, this is the thing that most of the women will like be talking to me about, and they'll be saying, oh, because that's what they see. And as much as we say it's not about the aesthetics, it's not about the way we look, it is in many ways as well. As much as I say it's about how you feel, it's about your energy, it's about, but and they're like, yeah, but I want to lose weight. And I look in the mirror and I see this, and it's like, oh, it's really upsetting me. So, you know, that's kind of what I would say about the stress. I mean, I can keep
Yeah.
talking about it because it's like I'm
No,
very
no, no.
passionate
But
about
and I
it.
think that's one of the important things is, you had a quiz in the book, and I'm like looking through the list, and
That's
it's
a
not a
huge
short
list.
list. It's not a short list, like 40 different symptoms
Yeah.
um that women can deal with as they're going through this. And so yeah, it's definitely a confusing time. And a lot of
Yes.
times, certain of them, if you look at them, that they're also symptoms of other things. Fatigue is a
Yeah.
very common um, symptom. Brain fog, which you spoke to in depth because it was one of the main things that kind of got your attention,
Oh, for
or
sure.
how I guess getting attention maybe. But you were dealing with that and not
I
realizing
thought
what
I
was
was
going
going
on.
crazy.
You thought you were going,
I
yeah.
thought I was going crazy. I honestly thought I was going crazy. And the fact the fact of the matter is, when we talk about menopause, I mean, I know back in the day, and I see if you would agree with me, that we didn't know a lot about menopause at all. Perimenopause, I didn't even know what that was. I'm quite open to the fact that I had no clue. I didn't even know that estrogen and estrogen were the same thing. But that's how much little knowledge, we knew, even as fitness professionals, or when I've spoken to many doctors, and they're like, they had like tiny amount of the training when it came to menopause. So, it's the fact with the brain fog. Yes, that was one of my symptoms, but I didn't get hot flashes. So for me, menopause was about old women getting hot flashes. So of course, I wasn't in menopause. I wasn't like going through perimenopause. I was fit, I was healthy. That wasn't going to happen to me. But I had brain fog. I stopped sleeping. I started getting like this thickening around my middle, and I didn't get it. I did not understand what it was. But because I didn't get hot flashes, for me, it's not menopause. Of course, it's not menopause. But that is what we were led to believe, that that's what menopause was, because it was made fun of. You can see, it's one of those things that you see women being made fun of because they're having hot flashes. You've seen it on TV or in the movies or whatever, and it's just, I'll always remember the ladies out there, Sex and the City, seeing Samantha with her, when she had her menopause episode, when she was on there as well. So it's one of those things that, yeah, hot flashes is I've got one of my top 6 symptoms. But for me, it wasn't actually. For me, it was more brain fog, it was more anxiety, overwhelm, sleepless nights. That was what it was for me. So it would be so interesting to know what your listeners would think, what is it for them? Because I'm
Yeah.
always
And
interested
that's
to
why I
know.
think the quiz is important because, again, you can kind of go through it and say, well, yeah, I'm experiencing this at some level and this at some level. And that could kind of be the first indicators that you're getting to that point. It's not like, there's not like a standard. Okay, this is how it happens. This is the order it happens. This is when it happens.
Mm,
It's an individual response for each and every woman that goes through
absolutely.
this. When they start, when they finish, what they go through. But can we
Yeah.
talk about the top 6 symptoms so at least they kind of know the general lay of the land if they're
Yeah, of
approaching this?
course. I mean, I put the top 6 in my book. This is from my own findings from working with many, many, many women. The top 6 I put in there was belly fat, which is probably the main one that the women talk about. Hot flashes. I'm just trying to think where I've wrote it down. Actually, I've got it: belly fat, I've got brain fog, hot flashes, anxiety and overwhelm, sleep disturbances, and low libido. I mean, low libido is something that is very rarely spoken about as well, because it's a bit, oh, it's a little bit embarrassing to talk about that. But those are the 6 that I spoke about in the book. But a lot of the action steps for all of those are very, very similar. You know,
Yeah.
it's a lot to it's a lot to do with balancing those hormones, you know, eating well, moving. And something I always say, it's not actually rocket science. And I try and say to the ladies, it's not a lot of times in the health and wellness space, we're led to believe things are very complicated, but it's not actually that complicated. I try to make things as simple as possible and to put some action steps into place that you can actually do.
Yeah. I we don't have time to talk about all six of these. I wish we did because again, they need to get your book and go through these because I think they'll see some symptoms that they didn't even realize were associated with this.
Yeah, can I tell you
And
one that was really popular and I didn't realize? I put it on my Instagram one time. I was having really itchy ears. My ears were itching so crazy. I put it on, I actually put it on one of my stories on my social media. And the amount of women that were like, oh my gosh, I have got itchy ears too. So it's something that is silly as that. And it's a bit say it's silly, it drives you insane. But you know, it was amazing how many women had that as well.
right. So one of them you talked about is belly fat. And it was so interesting because I associate with a lot of trainers, personal trainers and coaches and nutrition coaches. And poor guy, he got a client and the client is in menopause and he doesn't really know much about it. So he's asking some questions. And I started to answer the question, but I thought I'll go ahead and I'll see what other coaches are saying to this guy. And then one of them is how hard it is to convince them that they have to eat only 1,200 calories. And
Oh,
yeah.
well,
And
that's
I
like
had to I
like
had to walk
someone
away
putting
from my
like their
computer.
claws down
Yeah.
like the nails down a chalkboard to me. It's like, ah.
I I I had to walk away from my computer. Now you've kind of already explained why we're accumulating fat in the belly is really just a response to the lack of
Mhm.
estrogen, and then also probably having additional sugar, added sugar potentially in our diet that we don't really need. And so that's why we're really putting on the body fat. And again, during this period of time, the stress, the anxiety, chocolate tends to be a go-to resource for dealing
Yeah.
with those. So there is a little bit of sugar in there. Not saying don't eat your chocolate, ladies. I'm just saying it is a thing. But what can someone do about it if they start noticing, like you said, a little thickness, but however they want to define it, what's some things that they can do, simple things they can do to resolve that or help it?
Oh, the first thing is to stop stressing about it because that's not going to help. Because that's the
Yeah.
first thing. You look at it, you cause yourself more stress. So
Yeah.
that's the first thing I would say to you, which is easier said than done. I would also say, don't do what I did as a fitness professional. I did what anybody thought they should do. Was I thought, right, okay, I need to do so much more cardio, high level cardio. I need to reduce my calories to a really silly amount. And that's what I needed to do. And nothing shifted. And I didn't get it. And I didn't understand. And that was me as a fitness professional, like when I was mid 40s until I studied and and then it was like, and the penny dropped, and I was like, oh, right, I get it now. So you need to make sure you are eating as little processed foods as possible. So when I say of packet as possible. Now, a lot of times people like to eat things in a packet because it's got everything listed on the back, as your calories would be listed on the back. But think about it sensibly. If something is in a packet, it's going to sit in the shops for as long as possible. So what is being put into that food to keep it on the shelves for as long as possible? There's going to be a lot of additives and a lot of things that are not really going to serve you well. And one thing that if you've got a lot of like additives in there, it's going to cause inflammation in your body, which is something you don't want either, because something a lot of women do suffer with is like things like achy joints, frozen shoulder. So we need to try and bring the inflammation down, but that's another conversation. So we need to try and think of eating as much from scratch, like cooking from scratch as possible, eating whole foods, making sure you got a lot of protein, plenty of protein in your diet. Make sure you have carbohydrates, but your complex carbohydrates, not the simple carbohydrates. So the simple ones, I call them the crappy carbs. I do apologize, but that's what I call them. It's like anything that is white or, your pastries, your cakes, your cookies, all that. We know the carbohydrates that aren't that great for us. We need to make sure we got lots of veg, And then also your fiber and, from fruit and veg and, fill your plate with vegetables. It's very boring, but that's exactly what it needs to be. Make sure you're eating good whole foods, not necessarily the ones that
Yeah.
you grab when you're
Well,
tired.
I'm going to argue with you there a
Okay.
little. They don't have to be boring.
No, this is
Take
true, actually. I
take
say
it.
that.
I was talking to someone and they said they took a cooking class and they had a whole new appreciation for foods that they thought they didn't like because they were boring, and now they've learned ways to use
Oh,
spices and other things to make them taste so much better. So
I tell
this
you what, I
might be
think
a good time for you to just get a little bit more comfortable with expanding your taste palettes to make things that you
absolutely.
normally
Now,
wouldn't like much better.
actually, I don't disagree with you at all. And that's not what meant by being boring.
Yeah.
What I meant by being boring is what I'm saying. It's boring because we know it. And it's like, I make a joke about it. It's like, no, the food doesn't have to be boring. Absolutely not. I totally 100% agree with you. It's the fact of sometimes you don't want to hear the fact that eat whole foods, move more. I guess it's very simple a lot of times, and especially, I don't know if guys are the same, but a lot of times with women, and I was the same, you'd rather have a magic pill. Tell me something magical that it's going to make it so much easier and quicker. And, you know, that's
Yeah.
what I mean by when I say it's boring, I mean it is just the fact of you got to eat well, you got to get your sleep, you got to bring your stress down, you've got, those and
Yeah.
eat well. And that's what I mean when I make a little bit of a joke about it.
Yeah.
But
You got to stop being a teenager.
exactly. And the thing is with the food, I tell you, right, you're exactly right with the food, because I am a person who's not a fan of cooking. I'm not at all. But when I realized I had to start cooking from scratch, I was like, oh, this is going to take me ages. But then once you get into it, you're like, oh, this is actually not that difficult, actually. I'm learning and I'm now enjoying what I'm doing. And it's like, yeah, and I feel so much better because I am cooking in that way. And it does make a massive difference. And it doesn't have to be hugely expensive. That's another thing people say, oh, it's too expensive. No, it's not. It doesn't have to be expensive either. And if this is your health you're talking about. Going back to the belly fat, getting rid of it, it is like the whole foods, because when you cut your calories at this, when you're of my age, I'm 50, when you're around this middle age, it's not what you need anymore, because I could do that when I'm in my 20s or 30s. If I wanted to drop some pounds, I would just basically not eat a huge amount and it would just come off like that. But that is because it's more subcutaneous fat, which is like the fat on your body that is, that squishy bit, and the squishy fatness all over your body. Whereas unfortunately what we tend to get now around the middle section is visceral fat, which it is, I'm not going to lie, it is trickier to get rid of, but you have to do it by eating well. Just cutting your calories is not going to get rid of that fat. That is a
Yeah.
fact. So we have to really think about the quality of our food. I personally don't count calories. I do get a lot of backlash sometimes from people when they're like, oh, but you need to count your calories. It's having awareness of what you're eating. It's a quality of the food that you have, not necessarily the quantity of the food that you have. But another major thing I will always say is you've got to have, I personally believe, the 80-20 rule. It's not about deprivation. I'm too old to be miserable. The women I work with, they say, you're too old to be miserable. You're too old. I say this in the
Yeah.
nicest possible way. You're too old to be missing out on memories with your family, going out for meals or whatever. But if you are serving yourself well, 80% of the time with your nutrition, with your movement, with your stress, with your sleep, you're on the right track. 20% of the time is that little bit of wiggle room so that you can perhaps have the glass or two of wine or the piece of birthday cake. And when you do have that mindset, you tend to make better choices because you're not feeling like you're being hard done by. You don't have a bottle of wine or maybe two bottles of wine. You don't have three slices of cake or a big, huge slice, So it's all about mindset. I think mindset is massive as well. And so
Yeah.
not so much processed foods, not so much high sugar, whole foods. Don't beat yourself up. Have the 80-20 rule and stop stressing yourself when you look in the mirror, because you are a beautiful person, however you are. And it's about time you started looking after yourself and not, beating up on yourself all the time. That's what I
Yeah.
would say about belly fat.
Yeah. A
Might
lot
take
of
a
that
little bit of
comes,
time to
yeah.
get there, but it will happen.
Yeah. Well, a lot of that comes from comparison. If you can just get away from comparing yourself to other people or to who you were,
Mm.
and just realize you're in this stage of life. We go through a stage of life, we go through puberty. And so that's the movement from being a child to being an adult. And it's an uncomfortable, we forget a lot of it, but it was an uncomfortable time for most of us. What we were
Yeah, for
going through, the
sure.
changes and all that. This, particularly for a woman, is a little harder even, but you're an adult now, so you're in a better place to kind of handle it if you put your mind to it. Men go through andropause, but it's not anything close to menopause at all. It's more gradual decline, and you're like, okay, this is getting worse and worse, and I'm putting on more and more belly fat, and as a result I'm also producing more estrogen. And so, again, it's one of
Finish
those
your swap.
cycles. Right. It is. It's like, yeah, so if we're not careful, we become the women and you become the men. And it's like, well, because again, belly fat, the visceral fat we're talking about, it increases your risk of heart disease.
Absolutely.
And so as women get older and they have more belly fat, that's putting them at a higher risk of heart attack, stroke, and those types of things.
Absolutely.
So this is a health concern. It's not such an aesthetic concern at this point. Let's go ahead and keep that under control. Not because I
Absolutely.
mean, granted, you want to look and feel great, you want to be sexy and all those and strong and all those things, but realize that the real risk here is to your health. And so eating well and doing these things, they are acts of self-love.
I totally, totally agree. And this is what I do try to say and this is always the first thing is, and is this the same with men as well? Because I don't work with men, but for women, it is what they see in the mirror. But ultimately, what I try to like drum into them, it's about being healthy, happy, strong, independent in your old age. And that is also going to help you with not getting osteoporosis, with your like, heart disease, all the things, the things that you've just mentioned now, because yeah, the main thing is you look in the mirror and you're like, and you don't like what you see, but ultimately is about being happy, healthy, and strong and being able to live. I mean, my grandmother lived well into her 90s, and I believe in my bones that I will be like her, but I want to make sure that I am happy, healthy, and independent when I'm doing that, because that's what you need to do. You don't want to
Yeah.
be dependent on others. And it's keeping those legs strong so you can still get up and walk. It's doing the work now to move you into a much better future.
Yeah. You're playing my favorite music. So thank you. Um,
Oh, oh, good. And we're on the same page, which is good.
Yes. Okay. Now the other one, and this is one that, well, my wife has gone through this, and for her, I think this was the one that just really upset her the most, was the hot flashes.
Really.
Yeah. And so for her, when she was going through one, it like disrupted everything. She couldn't really, she didn't feel like she could function at all, because she was just the way she felt, and it affected everything. And so particularly when she's asleep, and I'll know she's going through one because she has a little fan right there by herself, and she doesn't like having a fan blowing on her
Mm.
unless. And so
Cool.
then she turns on the fan. I know it's happening because I'll feel or hear the fan go on.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's multiple times per night, and again, that's just so disruptive to your sleep and
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 it's
this
the
and
sleep thing as well, isn't it? And you know what is so sad? And like I mentioned earlier as well, it's like it's mocked. The hot flash is mocked. It's seen as funny, and it's not funny. It's the most
no,
debilitating thing. And I feel quite lucky. I mean, there's still time for me to get hot flashes, but I feel quite lucky that I'm not actually a person at this moment that suffers from that. But when I speak to women, obviously, same as your wife, it is just the most awful thing. The fact if it happens at night and you just want to sleep, and if you're not sleeping, it's just terrible. I mean, I know for myself, I had disrupted sleep for quite a long time before I understood what was going on. And just the tiredness, and then you're having to deal with everything else. It's just really, really tough. So I do feel for your wife, and I do
Yeah.
feel for the
The,
women that
the
deal with it.
closest experience I had was I had a doctor that had me taking niacin for my blood pressure, and so I started taking it, and then one day I was walking through a Costco, and then I felt like my body was on fire,
Oh,
you know.
wow.
And it was just a flash that comes from the niacin. And he's like, I'm like, I called him up and I said, I don't know what happened, but I had this flash, and it's because I just changed my meds. So I was like, that's why I need to call the doctor. And he's like, okay, that's the niacin. You need to take it at night and not take it in the morning. And so I started taking it at night, and again, it would do the same thing, and it'd wake me up. So I was like, okay, I can't take it at night. So we had to find a different option at that point in time, which eventually became losing the weight, getting your blood pressure back by normal means and not by medication. But so that's the
Yeah.
closest I've gotten, but I don't even think it's close based on what I'm seeing with my wife. It's a very different experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say it's good that you have that experience because obviously that's not good, but it is good in a way you had a slight taster of what it was to have. You seem like a guy that would be very understanding anyway, but
Yeah.
it's nice to know that you have got that understanding, which
Yeah,
is
guys, take a couple doses of niacin and
yeah,
get one
yeah.
of those, and then yeah, you'll see. But it is. So when a woman's dealing with the hot flashes, what are some things that they can do to help with that process?
Well, I think it's understanding what is going on. It's like it's the hypothalamus, which is like the body's thermostat, which is literally going haywire, and it's understanding why that does actually happen. It's to do with the hormone dysregulation. It's all the fluctuation of it. I kind of put it to the simile of when you've got adult kids in the house and the house suddenly becomes really, really, really hot, and you're like, what on earth? Why is the house so hot? And you'll go down and they've turned the thermostat right up to the top and they're wandering around in their vest and shorts. And you're like, just put a jumper on. In the UK, it's quite cold,
Yeah.
so it's like that uninvited turn up of the thermostat. Um, and it's just that disruption because of the hormones. And it's one of those things that you can look at it and think, well, why does that happen? You could put it down to triggers. I would always say to somebody who is going through that, what are the triggers? Have you had spicy food or lots of caffeine? Are you very stressed? All these different things is it something going on that has caused this? And although a lot of times, many of the women go, I don't understand. I don't know why it happens. And I think it's a lot of times it's one of the most misunderstood symptoms of why does this actually happen. It also seems to happen at the most irritating times, like if some woman needs to do a presentation at work and then the hot flash will come on. But I would imagine that is a lot to do with the stress of the thought. Is
Yeah.
it going to happen when I'm going to do this presentation, and getting yourself worked up? So it's learning a lot of breathing techniques to try and just bring those stress levels down a little bit. It's doing all the things with the nutrition and the exercise and just putting certain things into place that to try and help. A bit of weight loss as well can help with it as well. But I do find talking to women, the hot flashes is probably very frustrating because it's the not understanding of why and when it is actually going to happen, because it is such a physical response. With brain fog, it doesn't feel like such a physical response because you can kind of hide it a little bit. It's not such a, it's not something that everybody else can see.
Yeah.
So the same with belly fat. You see it, but not everybody else sees it. But if you have a hot flash, there's no getting away from it. It's there,
Yeah.
So that's I just find it hot flashes are probably one of the most frustrating
Yeah.
things.
And then like I like that I think in the book you said like kind of keep a journal because you might be able to find a few triggers that are out there where you can say, okay, yeah, if I eat this way. The other things that, like what you mentioned is as I was thinking through it is okay, well, we all go through a circadian rhythm with our hormones. So there might just be times of the day or times at night where you're more likely to do this because your hormones in a natural way are generally
Yeah,
fluctuating, and
yeah,
then you've got this going on and you got that going on, and then they kind of collide, and it's like you have that. So you could just know to expect them at certain times. You could know it's a stress induced thing, it's a food
yeah,
induced thing, those types of things. So some of those things you can avoid and others you may not be able to, but at
yeah.
least you understand. And then the only other thing I'd add is just be kind to yourself. It's it is what it is, and it will pass, but just be
Yeah,
yourself
it
and be
doesn't
kind.
feel, I think at the time it doesn't feel so like, you don't feel like being kind to yourself and, it's because you think, yes, it will pass, it will, but it doesn't feel like that at the time at
Yeah,
all. But what you said, I totally reiterate what you're saying. For me, writing things down, if you wrote down a 7-day food diary, and I find this is super, super helpful, is if you write down a food diary, everything you eat, everything you drink, the times that you have it, how you're feeling at those times. It doesn't have to be about hot flashes, but it could be about bloating, tiredness, your energy, overwhelm, anxiety. Just write down, how did you feel when you woke up? How do you feel mid-morning? Lunchtime, are you really ravenously hungry? Mid-afternoon, do you feel like you just need to go and have a nap? How did you sleep? Have write all these, I call it a mood and food diary. So writing everything down, a lot of times you can then possibly see things that are correlating, and you could tweak things in your diet. And nutrition has such a big impact on how we feel and our moods, our energy, what is going on with our bodies. Not just for women, but for men as well. So I just think that is such a huge thing, which is super, super helpful. And it's just the awareness as well.
yeah,
I know for myself, before I was doing this, I'd go into my kitchen. I'm a very, cookies are my thing, are my downfall. And I will go in late at night, scurry in the cupboards, have a few cookies. Well, I say a few, probably about 5 or 6.
yeah,
And then, and you can eat with mind, it's mindless eating. But then if you write that down, you're like, oh my gosh, did I really have 6 cookies? I did. Oh my gosh, I did. So it's that sort of thing as well. I
yeah.
think helps.
Okay, the other one, and this was the one that you really kind of was your main one that kind of
Mm.
got you all into this uh, research was the brain fog.
Yeah,
So
for
what's
sure.
going on there, and what can we do if we notice that we think we're losing our mind or we're going into dementia and
Yeah,
you're only in your 40s and you're like, oh, is this how it goes?
I
And then
know
it's
for
not, but
me. Oh, for me, it was brain fog. I didn't know what it was. I seriously thought I had early onset dementia. That's how bad I thought it was. And I remember going to my best friend. She's a few years older than me. And I just said to her, look, I just don't know. I'm just terrified. And she was like, oh, it's menopause. It'll pass. And I was like, what? And I was, as I said earlier, I was like, it's not me. I'm not going to get menopause. I'm, not hot flashes and everything. But then I did do a bit of study and I was like, got my head out of the sand and I was like, oh, yeah, I think this is actually what it is. So with the brain fog, I mean, it's the estrogen, it plays a role in regulating the neurotransmitters, which are like the little the chemicals that send messages to the brain or the body. And it's just it messes with that when the estrogen is going up and down. I kind of like to think of it as, you have a telephone line it gets disconnected and you don't get the message. Um, that's kind of, the connection gets broken. And it can be, some days, I mean, I still get brain fog now, even doing, all the things. I mean, I could sit here and go, yeah, everything's amazing, everything's fabulous. But I know it would be a lot worse if I wasn't putting into place the things that I do for myself now. But I would always say, brain fog for me is the thing. And it became apparent as well when I do my workouts in the morning. And years ago, I could just reel off the choreography of what I was doing, the workouts, the exercises. I would just do it. And I was like, but then I was like, I cannot remember. I would do 3 exercises. I couldn't remember number 4. So I now have a whiteboard where I write everything down and it's all written there. And I have to do that. It's just one of those, one of those things. But it's about the estrogen, and it's just messing around with those little messengers that want to connect to the brain, connect to the muscles, connect to all the areas of the body that makes it want to work, but particularly the brain. And it can be super frustrating. And even so, when you're introducing somebody to someone who you've known for years and you cannot for the life of you think of what their name is, or you see a movie star and I don't know what their name is. I know who it is, but I don't know what their name is. Or, we've all been there, but
Yeah.
it's like amplified when you're going through this as well. And it can be super embarrassing. And especially when you're working, it could, for me, even for me to do this, to chat to you today, I'm like, am I going to remember all the things that I know? Thankfully, it's so ingrained in my head that I am actually able to do this, but it's me being real and being like honest with you as a woman who's in perimenopause. It could possibly have happened. I could have been stuttering over my words, going, oh, but that's just real life. That's just how it is. But it's making sure you put things into place. I've got 4 pillars that I use. It's movement, nutrition, stress, and sleep. Those are the 4 pillars that I try to really, really work with. And I know I do it for myself. I do it for the ladies that I work with. And I know if I didn't put the action plans into place, I would have a lot more exacerbated symptoms than what I do actually have now. So I'm never going to lie and say, you're going to get rid of everything. It's going to be absolutely fine. It's being honest, being real. It's a period in our phase in our life that we are going through. We've got to make the best of it, and we've got to make the best of ourselves and protect ourselves for old age as we
Yeah.
move forward.
Now, one of the core things, obviously 40 symptoms you had listed. We've talked about a few. There's some major ones. There's similarities. There's the basic 4 pillars you talked about, that if you're addressing those 4 things consistently,
Yeah,
you're going to reduce how severe some of this stuff is.
yeah,
Maybe even whether some of it happens at all. We can't prove that, but again, if we're taking care of ourselves, our body has this really cool way of taking care of us.
absolutely. Yeah, for
So
sure.
it's not like you go through the book and you're like, oh, here's 4 things I got to do, here's 4 things I got to do, here's, you're like,
Yeah,
okay, that's 16 things. No, it's they're the same things. It's just, consistently across all of them, you understand why it's addressing that particular thing, and you can
yeah,
put together a program for yourself. And the workouts are 15 minutes a day, and you're able to
yeah.
get what you need to keep your body strong, sexy, and sane.
Absolutely, yeah. And the 15 minutes, people always say to me, is 15 minutes enough? I've done it for 16 years, 15, 16 years. For me, it's enough. The reason why it's enough is because I can do it consistently. If I said to somebody, right, we're going to do an hour 5 times a week, they might do it for 2 weeks, but I can guarantee week 3, something will be a curveball will be thrown or something will happen. They'll be like, I can't make today. I haven't got time. Haven't, because we always get put down the bottom of the list. But if you do those short workouts consistently over time, it's a game changer, absolute game changer. And even though the book it says it's a 4 week plan, this is my 4 week plan to set you up to be able to move on, build the habits to be able to move you forward into, or move you on to be able to create that lifestyle change that you can then go off and do your own thing, or you can come and join me, obviously, with what I do. But my aim is for you to create those habits within those 4 weeks and get the understanding and the knowledge, so then you know where you can just change your lifestyle and make it a sustainable habit to be able to do and continue.
Excellent. So, Cara, I define wellness as being the healthiest, fittest, and happiest you can be. What are 3 strategies or tactics to get and stay well?
I love that. I love that you say that, because it aligns with everything that I believe as well. And I would say number one, small goals. If you make too bigger goals, you have that big goal. Say you have somebody that wants to lose a lot of weight, and you're like, I've got to lose this amount of weight. And it will stop them in their tracks, because they'll think, oh, what's the point? I'm going to fail. But if I say to you, right, let's make 3 goals for this week, only small, Get out. If you're not walking at all, get out and walk 10 minutes a day. If you are, having a lot of sugar in your diet, just cut one thing out of your diet. So maybe you're drinking some fizzy, I don't know, what do you guys call it? Soda. You call it
Well,
soda,
they'll
don't
call
you?
it soda, they'll call it Cokes, they'll call it pop.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
try and get rid of
yeah.
soda from your diet at least once or twice a day, a week, sorry, or just try and cut that down. Just choose just some really short little goals that you can do. Don't make them too big because anything too big is going to stop you in your tracks. So I would always say that you make your small goals, write it down. When you've done it, celebrate, congratulate yourself, make another small goal because every small goal that you complete is moving you forward to that big goal that you originally had that stopped you in your tracks. So that would be my first pointer that I would say.
Okay.
The second one is give yourself some non-negotiables. Non-negotiables are things that you put into your schedule that come hell or high water, you are going to do. Unless your head's fallen off or something terrible's happened, you do that. You tell your family, you tell your friends, no, this is my time. I'm doing this for me because it's important that I do this for me. And that could be anything. That could be sitting down with a coffee, writing a journal. That could be, I mean, for me, it's doing my workout in the morning. Every weekday morning, I do a 15-minute workout. That's my non-negotiable. It could be anything. Like I said, going out for a walk once a day. Make something your non-negotiable. So that is your thing. And I would say do at least three of those. Do three of those a week. And then the last thing I would say to you is I personally would say live by the 80-20 rule. So 80% of the time, you're doing all the things that serve you well. 20% is that wiggle room that if you mess up, if you have a bad day, if you go out for dinner and you want to go out for dinner with your partner and have a bottle of wine or whatever it is, go and do that, make memories, but and don't feel guilty. So this is like a double thing. 80-20 and don't beat yourself up. Because the amount of times I hear women particularly saying, "Oh, I've messed up. What's the point?" And they throw the towel in and they go back to their old habits. If you have a rubbish day, which is going to happen, no plan that you do is ever going to run smoothly. But there will be days when you mess up or it doesn't go, like I said, doesn't go to plan. Don't beat yourself up. Just crack back on the next day. As long as 80% of the time you're doing all the things that serve you well, you are on the right road. It might take you a little bit longer. Yeah, this might be a little bit controversial in some way, because everybody wants to get there by a certain date. But it might take you a little bit longer, but you're going to be a lot happier and a lot more able to sustain what you are doing and create that lifestyle.
Excellent. So, Cara, if someone wanted to learn more about you and learn more about the book, The Menopause Metabolism Fix, where would you like for me to send them?
I've got my Instagram. My handle is Cara Metz. It's CARAMETZ_. So that's my Instagram. You can grab the book on Amazon. Just have to put in the Menopause Metabolism Fix. And I also have my app, my Cara Fitness app, CARA Fitness app. You can find that at carafitness.co.uk.
All
So
right.
that's
Well,
me.
you can go to the show notes for this episode, and I'll be sure to have the links there. Cara, thank you so much for being a part of 40 Plus Fitness.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and it's just great to speak to somebody who's got the same thinking as me as well. So it's just incredible. So keep doing your great work because you're amazing.
Thank you. If you enjoyed today's show, take a moment to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you would, please leave us a rating and review on your podcast player of choice. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we meet Dr. Alexandra Soa and discuss her book, The Ozempic Revolution, a doctor's proven plan for success to help you reverse obesity, end yo yo dieting, and protect yourself from disease. Until then, have a happy and healthy week.